need the best. That's why you're here.
We're a rescue team, not assassins. Now, what do we gotta do?
No, we're never gonna survive. Unless we get a little crazy.
Holy Mother of God.
No, we're never gonna survive.
Who's here? You're in a world that hurts. There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man.
In a world full of people, only some want to fly.
Whatever it is out there, killed Hopper. And now it wants us.
In a heaven of people, only some want.
The man was killed. You must have wanted it. Its blood was on the leaves.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Excerpt from the October 1996 cover dated A Decade of Dark Horse number 4, What Were We Thinking? By Mike Richardson and Randy Stradley. It's not so easy now to recall exactly what was going through our heads 10 years ago when we first got together to start Dark Horse Comics. We were fans of the medium, of that there's no doubt, but we thought comics could be more than they were, or more than what they had become, more than just vehicles for adolescent power fantasies. Those were, and still are, the kind of stories that are easiest to tell in comics, but we had outgrown them, well mostly. We were looking for stories that would surprise and challenge us. Stories that we'd want to read ourselves. We had witnessed others of our generation grow dissatisfied with the kind of fare comics were delivering as well. People who loved the medium, people who loved what comics were capable of, people who loved the wonder and power that was being squandered, were leaving comics every day because they could not find stories to hold their maturing interests. We thought that's our audience. We were writers and would-be artists ourselves, and we knew other writer artists. We knew Paul Chadwick and Chris Warner and Mark Badger through Apple V. In the Portland area, we met Randy Emberlin and Ron Randall and Paul Galassi and Gary Martin. Through these and other contacts, we met more creators. We thought these guys could probably do some great comics if they got the chance. Boy, could they. Creators' rights were a big topic at the time, and a lot of companies were claiming that they were giving creators the chance to own the characters they created. We were surprised to discover that wasn't the case at all. In many instances, the creators owned the copyright, but the publishers owned the trademark to the work. Creators were unable to do anything with their own creations without the publisher's involvement. We both knew we would never be happy working under such conditions. We thought, let's set up a company that gives creators total control over their own creations, even to the point that if they want to take their property and move to another publisher, we'll let them. Some might do that, but others will be happy to stay someplace where they call the shots. Even creators working on licensed properties will be happier if they're given as much creative freedom as the license allows. We thought, if creators are happy with their deal and have a personal investment in the future of their work, they'll strive to produce better comics. We thought, better comics will sell better, and maybe woo back some of those readers who felt there were no longer comics that held their interests. We thought, these will be comics that we'll want to read ourselves. We thought lots of things. Some of the things we thought turned out to be foolish. Others were just plain wrong. But enough of what we thought we could do and should do turned out to be right. And because of that, we ended up working with the best creators in the world and the best staff in comics.
Token Fire Guy. Predator. I saw Predator at the movie theater, and I remember we walked in a few minutes late because they were already in the jungle. So I didn't see that whole introduction part, the helicopter or the, what do they call it? They call it the action movie handshake with Action Jackson.
On, you son of a bitch.
yeah, it was they didn't, I missed that part, but I saw it later. And Predator, my gosh, what a great movie, they never missed for that first part. part. Pancho's character, Jesse Ventura's character, lines like, I ain't got time to bleed, stick around, stuff like that. It was just amazing, you know. And the Predator, the suspense that they put on you, setting up who it was. They even did enough with Billy to have him have it so that he's fearless. But he did the acting so well in that part where it was like, he's fearless, but, you know, like everybody was like, he's not afraid of anything. And yet he's afraid of this. And you're just like, what is this? What is it? You know, what is it going to be? You know, and the reveal of the Predator was amazing. You know, they first showed the Predator, I guess right after he killed Ventura is when they saw the cloaked Predator. His buddy starts shooting up with that rail gun or whatever it was, that chain gun. And they all started shooting up the woods. They didn't even ask questions. They just shot up the wood. I found it a little bit funny that nobody saw the green blood and thought that was kind of weird, except for the girl.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily think it was blood because, you know, you're in a forest. They might think it's not, it may not make the connection.
That's a fair point. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. Yeah. You know, and the only thing I didn't like about it is how fast his compatriots were killed. I would have liked for a couple of them to kind of make it to that last scene where he was, you know, making all the traps and all that stuff. That kind of would have been cool if it was like if it wasn't just 1-on-1. If it was like 3-on-1 and then the Predator killed a couple more and then it got down to just him at the very, very end. I think that would have been kind of cool. But for what it was at the time, it was probably that's right up there with Aliens for me. You know, it's just beautiful. It's a great movie. You know, it's a fun movie, and they don't make movies. They should make more movies like that, is what I should say. Maybe they do, and I just don't see them all. But in my opinion, Dutch, such a great character. I would have liked to have seen him in another movie, as in the Predator movie. Like if he came back to the forest, if, you know, they went back to him and said, you know, like, hey, can you come over here and do it? I mean, if they're gonna do it, why not? You know? But I did like Predator 2, you know, the city one, you know, and how it was. What was her name? The female in that one, Maria Conchita Alonso.
Yeah, because she'd been was she?
She was the one in color.
Who did the one who did Running Man with?
That was
her. Okay, yeah.
It sure was her. That's right. Oh man, I like that movie too.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of Schwarzenegger movies back in the day that were so good, and then I don't know. Yeah, I think that one was good. I even liked Eraser with Vanessa Williams. That was pretty fun too. But
it seemed like he moved more into straightforward action going into the 90s and maybe more high concept and comedic stuff, where in the late 80s he was still doing more genre stuff, so that means more sci-fi horror, and that was kind of his jam. I wish he'd stayed there instead of expanding out into more. I think he wanted to be more family friendly and not do so much R-rated type stuff, but R-rated was where he was his lane, I think.
Yeah, I think so. You know what, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense, and he did really good with that. You know, he did good with the Conan movies. He did good with the Predator movies, the Predator movie and the Terminator movie. What other ones did he have? Like I liked Sabotage. It was like it felt like an older school, you know, type. It was kind of like a modern what is that movie? Red Heat kind of thing, where it was a little bit more mature in that movie, and it wasn't kind of a mixed for kids and teens and adults kind of thing. You know, he was a major superstar in that time frame. You know, I think he was probably better than Stallone, better than Van Damme, better than Willis. Even it was just he was on a roll, and he did a lot. Whether it was comedy with Kindergarten Cop or Twins, I mean, it was just everything he was doing just seemed like it was working. Of course, they fall off after a while, and I don't know if it's because I don't understand how major celebrities start to fall off so hard. I don't know if it's because they stop reading scripts, they're just taking their jobs for granted or something. But there's just something about major movie stars that just can't stay consistent. Like I can't think of a major movie star that didn't fall off at some point.
The 3-part Predator the Hunted series begins running in the December 1993 cover dated Dark Horse Comics number 16. Is the same issue where Aliens Cargo concludes. It continues into January 1994's Dark Horse Comics number 17. That one featured the start of a Droids 3-parter, as well as a 3-part Aliens Alien story, and then concludes in February's number 18. The Predator receives the cover slot for that first chapter. It's painted by George Pratt. The story was written by Charles Moore, mostly known for his work on Caliber's Negative Burn anthology series. He also did some work with Jim Balint on a Dark Horse Presents serial called Dominique before he moved on to Catwoman, I believe. For my interests, he wrote the Blood Pack miniseries featuring the New Blood characters from DC's event annuals of 93, and apparently he went on to working at Turner Classic Movies. The art was by relative unknown D. Alexander Gregory, who left comics for role-playing, video games, movie storyboards. Scott Fisher publisher also did some work on that final chapter. The story is set in New York City, beginning in the Upper East Side, 1947. Publisher's summary for number 16. Tony Vincenzo is what you might call a family man. So is Bernie Jinx. Up until now, they had their own little disputes in the heart of Manhattan. But this time around, someone's knocking off both Vincenzo's and Jinx's boys. Vincenzo's in the slammer, but he ain't telling everything. The truth is too unbelievable, but he has a plan. Don't miss this issue's premiere of Predator: The Hunted City. And the premise of the story is essentially the same as the movie Predator 2. There's a gang war going on. Predator is taking advantage of that, hunting the top guys from all the mobs. The main difference is it's set in post-war era New York rather than near-future Los Angeles. And the summary is a bit of a spoiler because most of the story is Vincenzo holed up in a house. He's being attacked by other mobsters. He's defending himself. He tracks the Predator. Vincenzo's able to hold off the Predator until the cops arrive, and that's when he's arrested at the end of the first chapter. So the story of part 2 continues as Max is pursued by warring families, each intent on discovering who or what has been killing them off. The only thing they know for sure is that Max knows more than he's telling, and they'll beat it out of him if they have to. And so by the end of that one, what happens is we've continued the gang war. The cops have been investigating stuff. In the end, Tony Vincenzo gets out. So that goes into chapter 3. And finally, everybody on the streets knows that Tony Vincenzo always finishes a fight. In the taut conclusion of Predator: The Haunted City, he gets his chance. There's also a note on Xenopedia that acknowledges that perhaps the 2005 video game Predator: Concrete Jungle took a cue from this story, as it also features a 1930 set section. Obviously, this story is a little bit after that time period. This isn't Depression era, but you get the gist of it. It turns out that while he was in the slammer, Vincenzo is visited by what he calls spooky OSS types, military intelligence. They think this thing's some kind of outer space wooz-it. Big surprise, huh? But they want it covered up for national security. So I escaped before they could kill me. Some gratitude. I'm a fucking veteran. Actually, I guess because it's Dark Horse Comics instead of Dark Horse Presents, they do the little symbols. But I'm going to go ahead and peel back his presumed intended dialogue. I wasn't interested enough to read this one. The Max they were referring to, I believe, is a reporter or something. He teams up with Vincenzo. They end up in the sewer. While Max struggles to use a knife against the Predator, he accidentally pulls the pin on a grenade that the Predator was carrying around with him. Grenade goes off. Somehow Max and Vincenzo both make it out of that alive. I would assume that being that close to a grenade, they should have both died. It turns out that Vincenzo was using Max to lure the Predator because he had some sort of political clout or something. The feds cart Vincenzo away. The assumption is that he's never going to be seen again because he knows too much. Another one of those Men in Black types explains to Max that, hey, this story probably doesn't need to get out. We know that you know things. Why don't you use that, knowledge is power. Use it wisely. Basically, keep your mouth shut and you better get along to get along. In the end, it looks like a couple of the spooks are destroying evidence of the Predator. At one point, the Predator was stymied from killing the guys by a camera because it didn't understand what a camera was, but it could work grenades. They assumed that that's because you can't fight with a camera. They figured out how weapons work, but not so much other types of technology. And the end. Like I said, I read a little bit of the first chapter. It wasn't really grabbing my interest. The artwork, though, is very nice. It's a shame that these guys didn't stick around in comics. Mix of like Brian Stelfreeze, Tony Harris, John McCrae, Dusty Abel. Really nice little mix of art. Pretty to look at. Can't say that the art was as good as any of the people that was influential to the artist, but for a Predator story in Dark Horse Comics, it looked pretty damn good. So Predator skips Dark Horse Comics 19, shows up again for number 20. Cover is painted by Brom. Brom did all those really super cool, gothic, post-apocalyptic fantasy paintings for, I think, some of the TSR modules. I think he did work for Wizards of the Coast. I gotta be honest, the cover isn't up to the standards of those works, but it is a pretty nice little cover. And it's got a Predator holding a skull. Appears to have something to do with the Native American hunting grounds. The story's a two-parter. It's running in the same issue as the second chapter of X Welcome to the Jungle. There's one of the unusual instances where Dark Horse Comics only has 2 features, so they each run a bit longer. The story is Predator: Blood on Two Witch Mesa. Stories by Terry LaBan, alternative comics creator. I think the thing I best known for is Cud Comics. I also think he did some Native American themed books. Muktuk Wolf's Breath, Hardboiled Shaman. He left comics in the late 90s. He ended up becoming a comic strip writer artist for King Features Syndicate. He and his wife co-wrote the strip Edge City. Checking out the King Features website, that appears to still be an ongoing concern. There aren't a lot of newspaper strips that are still running these days. Although I do hear that a slot opened up recently. The art on the story is by Howard Cobb, fellow who apparently started out in illustration and fine fine art, detoured in the comics. Most notably, he drew the Virus miniseries that was the basis for the movie that starred Jamie Lee Curtis. I remember randomly a coworker at my comic shop was really into that miniseries. It was like the only comic the guy ever read. I read it. I thought it was okay, fine, whatever. Never did see the movie, but hopefully Cobb got some money out of that. Anyway, when the industry went kaput, his phone stopped ringing. He went back to fine art. Also, he's a little busy fathering 7 children up in Alberta, Canada. This story is apparently a continuation of Predator Big Game, which you may recall I didn't bother to read last time. Specifically, the character of Enoch Nakai, a Native American U.S. Army corporal, as well as the story of when his great-grandfather faced off against the Predator in the Old West. Enoch Nakai will apparently turn up in a Predator trilogy years down the line. Xenopedia tells me that Enoch Nakai is the only Predator character, specifically Predator character, that not only continues in multiple story arcs in the comics, but is also written by people besides their creator. Mark Verheiden wrote all the stories featuring Detective John Schaefer from the original miniseries and its various sequels. Enoch Nakai was created by John Arcudi, and in the much later miniseries, Chris Warner is going to write him as well. Publisher summary reads, on the lava flow, the Spaniards called El Mapais, Enoch Nakai fought his own demon in Predator Big Game. But though the beast is dead, Enoch's demons aren't, and he is destined to meet with them again in Predator Blood on Two Witch Mesa. And then number 21, also in the Blood and Dust streaked conclusion to Predator Blood on Two Witch Mesa, Mountain, whatever, Enoch's grandfather faces his own devil under the hot desert sun, and don't expect the Predator to lose this time. The gist of it is Nakai is plagued by dreams of the Predator, haunted. The military gives him credit for killing a Predator, but also he was ordered disobeying SOB that nobody liked and probably got a bunch of people killed, so they arranged for him to be honorably discharged. He ends up working at a gas station. What a way to treat a fucking veteran, right? Said Tony Vincenzo. Anyway, dude can't screw his head on right, can't stop thinking about the Predators, can't focus on his job, can't focus on his relationship. Finally, his grandfather takes him out to the desert, tells him the story of his whatever great-grandfather. There's some evil white racist guys. They end up tying the grandfather to a tree. Somebody gets a locky shut off. Sheriffs arrive. They manage to gun down the Predator. Dude says it means a lot to him that not only is he not the only person to run into a Predator, but his own great-grandfather had. This whole time, though, the government's been listening in. Eventually, this dude shows up at the gas station. Mr. Nakai, I'm John Smith with the Defense Department. May I speak with you for a moment outside? How'd you like to step up from being a pump jockey to working for Uncle Sam again, Mr. Nakai? We've been watching you, Mr. Nakai. We're very interested in your case. You seem to have an understanding of, shall we say, unusual visitors. I'm only here to offer you a new job doing something that might be of personal interest to you. Dude leaves him his card, and ultimately Nakai's thinking, better the devil you know. And they end until 2017. By the way, this second chapter was shared by a mecha 2-part story called Urban Renewal. The next issue, that book shares space with Aliens Mondo Pest, and I realized I spoke too soon about the 2-feature format. I guess it started at that point, and then it continues pretty much to the end of the series. The Predators do have one more appearance coming up in Dark Horse Comics, and in fact, with that issue, it becomes a 1-feature issue, but we'll have to save that for later. May involve some versing. Excerpt from the July 1996 cover dated, A Decade of Dark Horse #1, A Brief History of Dark Horse Comics, as remembered by Randy Stradley. 1971, Mark Verheiden, age 15, decides to start ANAPA as an American Press Association. Simply put, a group of people who, each month, create their own fanzines in which they comment on each other's work, discuss common interests, or feud. Each contributor produces enough copies of their zine for every other member to have one, then mails their copies to an elected executive officer or central mailer. The EO collates the zines from each of the contributors into one massive bundle and mails magazines out to the roster members. Everybody reads what the other members said about them, gets mad, then the whole process begins again. These days it would all happen on the internet. Under the mistaken impression that his venture was the 5th comics APA in existence, Verheiden calls it APA 5. Over the next 12 years, the roster eventually includes, though not all at once, such contributors as Mark Badger, Paul Chadwick, Dwight Decker, Randy Emberlin, Ron Harris, Frank Miller, David Olbrich, Bob Danaha, Mike Richardson, James Dean Smith, Robin Snyder, Randy Stradley, and Chris Warner, all of whom go on to work in comics, as does Verheiden himself. A number of longtime friendships, acquaintances, and professional relationships result. 1979, Mike Richardson opens a bookstore in Bend, Oregon. His plan is that the store will provide a living for him and his family, while still allowing him time to write an illustrated children's book. Richardson soon discovers that comics are his fastest moving merchandise. Within 2 years, he opens another store near Portland. Eventually, there will be 7 stores. Plans for the children's book are put on indefinite hold. 1983, Chadwick, Stradley, Verheiden, and Warner get together at the San Diego Comic-Con. Chadwick is hoping to find a home for a new series, of which he has already drawn the first 3 issues. Stradley and Warner are, respectively, pitching plots and art to attending Marvel editors. Based on the responses they receive, Stradley and Warner make plans to move to New Jersey to share digs with Appa pal Mark Badger. Verheiden decides to concentrate on writing for movies. Chadwick continues to shop for a publisher for another 3 years. 1984. In Oregon, Richardson now owns 3 comic stores and a restaurant, but he finds he still has an unfilled moment or two each day, and is yearning for a creative outlet beyond Apple 5. In California, Chadwick produces storyboards and posters for movies, while continuing to seek a publisher for his comics project. In New Jersey, Bradley, Badger, Stradley, and Warner, having all found work at Marvel or DC, temporarily fail to notice how miserable their lives are at that time. 1985. By summer, Richardson has decided the time is right to start a comics publishing company, as did about 100 other people, resulting in what has since become known as the Black and White Glut. He asks Stradley to join him. Richardson calls the company Dark Horse, after a soon-to-be defunct mail-order comics business, and plans to offer creators complete ownership of their creations. After hours and between customers, in a comic shop in Beaverton, Oregon, work has begun on a first issue of what will be known as Dark Horse Presents. Appa Fivers, Chadwick, Warner, and Emberlin agree to participate. 1986. Richardson and Stradley receive seat-of-their-pants lessons in every aspect of comic book production, from lettering to separations to printing. Richardson makes an offer to artist and Appa Fiver James Dean Smith. Dark Horse will publish Smith's character Boris the Bear if Smith will draw the story Richardson and Stradley write. Smith accepts. Dark Horse Presents #1 meets with overwhelming success. Certainly from our perspective, we had anticipated orders of about 10,000 copies, but received orders for 30,000. Continued demand resulted in a second printing, pushing the total of 50,000 copies sold. Boris the Bear does even better. Boris the Bear slaughters the teenage radioactive black belt mutant ninja critters, received initial orders for nearly 50,000 copies, selling an additional 30,000 second printings. Sales were undoubtedly helped by the fact that the day Boris #1 arrived in stores, so did 10, yes 10, new black and white Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ripoffs. Fans were justifiably tired of the flood of adjective, noun titles, and Boris struck just the right irreverent note. Dark Horse is suddenly off and running. Dark Horse moves to a small storefront office on Portland's east side. Chadwick finally finds a publisher for his series, Concrete. 1987. Neil Hankerson and Chris Challenor join the company, doubling the staff. Hankerson oversees operations. Challenor handles the majority of production tasks. Fan and retailer backlash against the flood of black and white books from new publishers puts the industry in a tailspin. Distributors and publishers who had built business plans based on the number of books that were being gobbled up by speculators suddenly find their customer base has vanished. Retailers and fans who had bought into the belief that comic books had some kind of intrinsic value suddenly find themselves stuck with dozens, hundreds, or thousands of unwanted comics. Distributors, retailers, and publishers go out of business. Fortunately, Dark Horse's titles are not significantly affected. The company's line expands with Paul Chadwick's Concrete, Mark Verheiden's The American, Ron Randall's Trekker, and Dark Horse's first foray into licensing Godzilla. 1988. Dark Horse acquires the comics rights to 20th Century Fox's Aliens. The first 6-issue series, by Mark Verheiden and Mark A. Nelson, is printed in black and white and is an unqualified hit. Dark Horse publishes its first manga titles, Godzilla and Outlanders. Bob Burden's Flaming Carrot Comics joins the Dark Horse lineup. In August, the company moves to Milwaukee, Oregon. Once again, the staff more than doubles in size. Eisner Awards. Best Continuing Series, Concrete. Best Black and White Series, Concrete. Best New Series, Concrete. Harvey Awards. Best New Series, Concrete. Best Cartoonist, Paul Chadwick. 1989. Based on the success of Aliens, Dark Horse licenses Fox's Predator for comics. The Mask appears in a new revamped incarnation in the pages of Mayhem. Richardson and Stradley meet with Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow in Los Angeles. An agreement is reached for Dark Horse to publish Hardboiled by Miller and Darrow and Give Me Liberty by Miller and Dave Gibbons. In a moment of epiphany during a company brainstorming session, Chris Warner utters the words Aliens vs. Predator. Eisner Awards. Best Writer-Artist, Paul Chadwick. Best Continuing Series, Concrete. Best Black and White Series, Concrete. Harvey Awards. Best Cartoonist, Paul Chadwick. Best Letterer, Ken Bruzenak, Mr. Monster. 1990. A banner year for Dark Horse. Aliens vs. Predator, Give Me Liberty, Hardboiled, and The Terminator all set sales records. Dark Horse trading cards are inserted into the comics. More bodies are added to the Dark Horse staff, including Bob Schreck and Diana Schutz, late of Kamiko. Space in the Dark Horse offices is at a premium. Dark Horse helps expand awareness of Earth Day as the exclusive source for Earth Day cloisonné pins, and by publishing Concrete Celebrates Earth Day, featuring never-before-seen work by Chadwick, Moebius, and Charles Vess. An adjoining building is purchased, and work begins on a massive remodel to provide Dark Horse with new spacious quarters. Department heads are asked to prepare 5- and 10-year plans on how the new space will be utilized. No Eisner Award ceremony is held this year. In April, the remodel is completed and everybody moves into the new building. Remodeling work begins on the previously occupied space. An open house 5th anniversary party brings dozens of creators from all over the country. Dark Horse begins an ongoing relationship with Lucasfilm, with the publication adaptation of Indiana Jones comics. Frank Miller's Sin City begins in Dark Horse Presents, followed shortly by John Byrne's Next Men. James Robinson and Matt Wagner team for Terminator One-Shot, featuring comics' first pop-up. Dark Horse kicks off a line of figure kits with Concrete, designed by Paul Chadwick and sculpted by Randy Bowen. Dark Horse's first crossover with DC, Batman vs. Predator appears. From the beginning of the year to the end, the Dark Horse staff once again doubles. Eisner Awards. Best Single Issue, Concrete celebrates Earth Day. Best Finite Series, Give Me Liberty. Best Writer-Artist Team, Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow. Harvey Awards, Best Anthology, Dark Horse Presents.
I'll tell you, on the Predators movie, the one with Adrian Brody, I actually dug the way they did that movie, a return to the original. I'm not saying it was better than the original. I'm not saying it's even better than part 2. What I'm saying is that it was good compared to what was coming out before. You know, the Alien versus Predator and the other ones. This one just somehow clicked for me. I like Alice Braga from I Am Legend. She was the Queen of the South. Alice Braga. She was the one with the sniper rifle in that movie. She did really good. I liked her in that. I wasn't a big fan of Lawrence Fishburne's character. Like, I haven't been a big fan of Lawrence Fishburne since the Matrix movies. His acting kind of fell off for me. Like, it is a little, almost like he's playing the same character, like Morbius and just about everything. Even when he's in the John Wick movies, he's kind of playing the same character.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind immediately that I like post-Matrix was Aquila and the Bee, you know, so maybe he got bored with the genre stuff and he maybe does the dramatic roles when it's just a straight-up drama, and maybe he lost interest in the genre stuff.
Maybe, yeah, because The Kid and the Bee was a decent movie. I did see that one. That was enjoyable. But yeah, I can't think of anything action-wise or anything off the top of my head, because he doesn't even do anything in John Wick. He just stands around with pigeons dressed as a bum. That's basically all he does. I'd like to see him go back to form, but I just haven't seen anything worth saying, worth noting in that way. But like I said, Adrian Brody in Predators was good. I liked the fact that they had the one Predator that was smaller than the hunting Predator in that movie, and how that Predator had to be helped. I did enjoy the prequel Predator with the Indians, Prey. Yeah, I enjoyed that movie. It was good. I like that they did it in English and they did it in the Indian Native American tongue. That's pretty neat. I didn't watch the one. I have a hard time watching subtitle movies because you have to put all your attention to it. And if you're watching it at home, it's kind of hard to pay complete attention when there's other things going around you. Unless I'm going to be sitting there watching the movie specifically with all the lights off and no distraction, I'd just rather just watch the English version, the dub version, or something like that.
You know, most of the cast is going to be in Dallas in May.
Are they? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Amber Mid-Thunder, Dakota Beavers, I think his name is, the brother, and the actual Predator. All three of them will be in town.
Nice.
Not in our town, but in
Dallas.
Slightly north of Dallas. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Irving, but it's Texas Frightmare Weekend in May.
I wonder if I'm off for that.
So there's a large number of people that would agree with you that Predator is like one of the best action movies ever.
Right.
I think part of it, especially as a child of the 80s, that is the greatest G.I. Joe movie ever made, because every single one of those guys is like in peak physical condition or completely sells himself as being like ultimate badasses. I mean, as much as you love the Colonial Marines and they got a good mix of people, but those guys are so much larger than life, so much bigger than life, and then for them to still get cut down the way that they do is pretty amazing.
Right. That's true. You're absolutely right. I like that comparison. I think it's the best G.I. Joe movie ever made. I would also venture to say another good movie that feels like a Predator movie, but it's not. It's obviously not a Predator movie, but is Tears of the Sun. You know, that Bruce Willis movie. I liked the character. The good guys were the good guys. The bad guys were the bad guys. It was such a good movie. The only part that was kind of shoehorned in was Monica Bellucci's character. But she's so easy to look at that it didn't even bother me. You know,
it's hard to complain. Even in the Matrix movies, it's hard to complain about Monica Bellucci.
I'm telling you, man. Up to this day, every time I see a picture of her, I'm like, God damn, she's hot. She's not. I'm not saying she's a bad actor. They did it logically. They were like, she's an American citizen, not because she's an American citizen, but she was married to an American citizen, you know, and her husband was dead. So I understood what they were, the concept of what was going on in that movie, but that's basically what it was. But like, I would say that Tears of the Sun is another good, say, quote unquote, G.I. Joe movie for that part, you know.
As you'd mentioned about Aliens, you've got a similar situation where it's a group of people trying to survive something that's just extraordinarily dangerous and deadly. So it's still kind of in that wheelhouse that you mentioned.
Absolutely. And it's It's movies like that. That's why I prefer Predator and Aliens over Terminator and say RoboCop, because Terminator, there's one or two people trying to fight this one robot in both movies, whether it's Judgment Day or the original one or anything after that. In Predator, it was a jungle scene. It was new, it was something different. The Predator it was perfectly named. It was perfectly, I don't know, there's just something better about Predator and Aliens compared to, say, Terminator and RoboCop. I know they're different movies and they got different concepts, but like the other day I saw RoboCop. That was a gory movie. Like it was pretty nasty. Like when the guy got covered in the chemicals and then he got hit by a car, I was like, gosh. And then when they actually shot up the character, what was his name? Peter Weller's character, thought it was just a regular rated. It was worse than Predator, in my opinion. It was more visceral.
And it does sound like movie for movie, you prefer the Predator franchise.
Predator, yes. Between Aliens and Predator, I would say Predators had better movies compared to Aliens. I think because Aliens for me, it's Aliens and Alien. Man, that's tough. Do I like Resurrection or Alien 3 better? Man, I'm not sure. I would say I like probably Resurrection a little bit better because it had a little bit better match. Both the endings weren't great, but it had a little bit better match that was more like Aliens 2. But Predator, I like Predator 1, Predator 2. I like Predators with Adrian Brody, and then I like Prey. So there's 4.
Yeah. But then there's the one we haven't talked about.
Which one?
The Predator.
The Predator. That was the last one, right? With the guy...
Just like right off the bat, the fact is like, okay, yeah, which guy was in that one again? I forget. That guy. With all those guys, they were all on the bus.
The guy that was in Logan. The guy that was in Logan.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even remember what that guy's name was, but yeah, the Predator was. I don't know. It had what was his name? Keegan-Michael Key. Mm-hmm. He's there for levity. He's there for comedy. But he didn't belong. He was shoehorned in, and it didn't work. And the Predator just keeps getting bigger and bigger in those movies. Mm-hmm. When you get to that point, it's like Jason going to Manhattan. Jason Takes Manhattan. Just gets to be too much at some point.
You seem to have had more longevity with the Predator franchise. Did you ever go beyond the movies, though? Did you ever comic books, games, anything like that?
No games, no comic books on Predator either. For some reason, as much as I like the movies, I never got into the comic books for any of these characters. I don't know why. It's just never been interesting enough, I guess, for me to... Like, nobody's ever told me they've read a great Alien story. You know what I mean? Or a great Predator story. If I heard fanfare about the stories about Predators and Aliens, I'd probably go read them. A lot of what I read, it is based on opinions of people that are around me, people that I know that read comic books. Nobody ever says, oh man, this Predator story is the best story I ever read, or this Alien story is the best story I ever read. It just seems like they're Predator, Alien stories that are just out there. I mean, is there anything that you've read that you would say like it would be worth reading as far as Aliens and Predators?
I would say if you ever come across either Aliens Salvation or Aliens Sacrifice, and they actually collected them in a trade called Salvation and Sacrifice. If you come across any of those, that's worth reading. That was some really good stuff and thematically connects well. And certainly the actual first Aliens vs. Predator miniseries kicks a lot of ass.
The first Predator versus Alien?
Yeah, the very first miniseries. I haven't read any of the later ones yet, or at least the ones that I have read haven't been very good, but that very first miniseries I enjoyed.
Okay. You know what year that came out?
90 or 91, somewhere in there. Okay. Yeah, it was Randy Stradley and... can't remember who drew that one. But okay. The Salvation is drawn by Mike Mignola, written by Dave Gibbons.
Really?
Sacrifice is written by Peter Milligan and painted by Paul Johnson.
Oh, wow. I didn't know Mignola did Aliens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he's inked by Kevin Maguire. I mean, not Kevin Maguire, Kevin Nolan to boot.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll check those out. Okay.
It's nice, and it's a one-shot. It's like a 48-page one-shot, so it's like, it's all killer, no filler.
Oh, okay. Nice. But see, that's kind of the thing with Aliens and Predators. Like, the only thing, most people that around me that I know that are into movies or anything, comic books or whatever, there's nobody telling me like, oh, this is a great story. If they tell me that it's a great story, I'll be more likely to go out and look for it and read it, because I'm always looking for good stories. It's hard. Sometimes you got to go through a lot to get to the good stuff.
Right. Well, and I've been doing an indexing show on Aliens specifically. And,
yeah.
While I've enjoyed all of the stuff to varying degrees, those are 3 where it's like, oh, you want something that you could just go in there cold and is worth the looking for. Those are that come immediately to mind.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely go look at those then. Yeah, I've been looking for something to read different lately. Everything that I've been reading right now has not been the best.
The publisher synopsis for Predator Invaders from the Fourth Dimension reads, "It's 1959, and Hollywood is spewing out dozens of grade Z alien invasion movies. But what happens when a real invader from outer space shows up in the backlot of a movie studio? Predator lands in Hollywood when he's hunting for some new talent, and the only roles these actors are getting are dead-end parts. With the aid of special glasses, 11-year-old Tommy Anderson is the only one who can see the Predator. But can this over-imaginative boy convince adults that there's really a murderous monster stalking him? It's mayhem at the drive-in when Predator comes a-huntin'." Publication date is listed as July 1st, 1994. Format full color. Price $3.95. The creators on the book are all familiar to us by now. Jerry Prosser, of course, wrote Aliens Hive, Cyber Antics, and a whole bunch of other Dark Horse stuff, plus some time over at Corman's Cosmic Comics and a run on Animal Man. If I recall correctly, I did a biography for penciler Jim Somerville in the 3rd episode covering Aliens Newt's Tale. Most of his comics work was for Air Soul Publishing back in the mid-80s. He did most of the issues of Stark Future, I believe all the issues of Maelstrom. He did some of the Warlock 5 after the original creators were run off by Barry Blair for Malibu. He did Demon Hunter, The Mummy's Curse. Likely during this time period he met Dale Keown, who brought him in to do a few backup pieces for his Pit series. After this, he did a little tiny bit of work for Dark Horse Heroes, or Comics Raiders World, however you want to call it. Not a lot of information on this guy after the fact, though. He just seems to have been in the wind. There's a lot of Jim Somervilles out there. All the ones I ran into on the internet didn't seem to be him. Clearly taking cues from movies like Popcorn and Matinee. Story set in 1959. It's basically about a William Castle type, and it's important to note that William Castle is referenced in the story, so it's not so much Castle stand-in as someone who's lower on the rings of Hollywood than Castle himself. Second-rate gimmick merchants, getting people into movie theaters, using stunts, promotions, trying to compete with television, trying to compete with each other. Our protagonists specifically have come up with 4D, which, nowadays we actually have 4D. 4D is basically all the mists and flashing lights, sprays and stuff that you'll get at some theaters. It's very similar to what William Castle was doing. And I guess 4D just differentiates from 3D in that 3D simulates something that's in 3 dimensions when it's actually a 2-dimensional image, where 4D actually has things coming at you. It's dumb, but it gets the point across. So anyhow, their new movie is about to come out, debuting the 4D process. Meanwhile, a predator lands on Earth, blows up a rabbit. The son of one of the guys involved in the movie is running around with the special glasses for the 4D, finds the rabbit's paw, follows the tracks of the predator, and somehow something to do with these glasses allows him to see through the predator's chameleon powers, invisibility, whatever you want to call it. Especially given that on these glasses, the lenses are both blue. They almost look more like sunglasses, and this whole premise very strongly recalls They Live, the John Carpenter movie. So while the predators mess around in the forest, preparing to start his hunt, the little boy finds several of those pellet grenade things, which I believe were from the movies, steals them from the predator. The predator notices, gives chase. The boy uses the grenades and his familiarity with the forest to get away from the predator initially, at least. Right around sundown, the boy gets back to his neighborhood, flags down a cop, convinces the cop to put on the shades. The cop can see the predator just in time to get killed by it. They've already set up that the boy knows how to drive. It's like a 12-year-old kid, but apparently his grandpa taught him. So he jumps in the cop car, drives off, actually runs over the predator at one point, makes his way to the movie studio, doesn't find his father, but does find his uncle, who is the director of the movie, if I recall correctly. The director has a long history of pulling stunts, so even when he puts on the glasses and sees the predator, he can't get anybody to believe him anymore than the kid could get anybody to believe that. So now they're both on the run. They make their way to the drive-in where the movie is going to debut. The plan is to get a hold of more of the special glasses so they can show the authorities there's an alien among us. Again, as with those two 90s revival movies, there's a movie within a movie that's in black and white. So of course we have the play where the people with the glasses are seeing the intended 4D special effect in the movie as well as the predator, and they're not able to differentiate one from the other. They just assume the predator is a really cool effect. Eventually the boy's dad is wounded by the predator, taking off the kid, who then steals the family Cadillac and drives that into the predator. As referenced in the mobster story, predator maybe doesn't understand the workings of a American motor vehicle, apparently nails the glass tank with his laser, blows up. Just as they think everything's okay, turn around and see a whole other predator there. This predator collects the grenade, the last grenade from the boy, and in the end, the movie studio thinks they've got a big hit on their hands based on people's reaction to the predator running around during the showing. And the kid's dad, who developed the 4D process, comes in with a new set of glasses. It's not clear, but it's inferred that the glasses came from the predator, but maybe not. Point is, the developer gives the glasses to his director brother. He puts on the glasses, and the story ends with the guy gasping, seeing something that we ourselves are not able to see. I tried to find information on this project. There really wasn't anything online. I did find a review on Aliens vs. Predator Galaxy. It's funny because it's a 1-star review. It's very critical, but at the same time, it's a pretty badly written review. It's just poorly articulated what they didn't like about it. I have my own own issues with the story. The main issue is just too long. It really drags things out. The kid's constantly on the run from the predator. We get the point. We could have told the story in half the time. I get why people would have a problem with that, but I do have an explanation for that. I had to go back and check a previous episode because I knew that there was a context for why this story existed. You may remember that in this time period, this is 94, so we're post-bust at this point, but there were obviously a lot of gimmicks that were still being employed because that was what made people money back in the early 90s. One of my favorites personally was Valiant Vision, which were clear glasses. You'd put those on, and something about the color process would cause reds to come at you, blues to recede, and you had like a really good sense of 3D depth while also still seeing in full color. Valiant Vision was something, I don't want to call it a last hurrah for Valiant because not too long after that was introduced, they got bought up by Acclaim. The whole industry was collapsing. Eventually, Acclaim itself went the way of the dodo. But for me, it was a notable development in comics since growing up, the only comics I had was the red-blue numbers that, worked, but again, they worked in black and white in something similar to a Viewmaster where you just had something that was clearly two-dimensional pushed away from another thing that was two-dimensional. One of the things that was really nice about Valiant Vision is you actually had a greater sense of depth and again, full color. I don't know if that's the process they were going to use for this Predator book, but going back to the old episodes, in the Wizard article about what Dark Horse had coming up in 93, 94, they talk about a similar set of glasses that had been developed for Invaders from the Fourth Dimension. If you look at this book, it is full of images of the Predator invisible. And on a standard page, this is pretty boring, and I can see why people would respond poorly to that. However, I strongly suspect that all the art for this book was produced with the intention of you wearing glasses that would reveal the invisible Predator only when you wore the glasses. So you look at the page, you wouldn't see anything, put on the glasses, you can see the Predator. So the whole bit is you're not necessarily reading the comic for the story, you're reading it for the gimmick. The comic was going to be a gimmick just like the William Castle story within the comic. It was going to be very meta. Problem is, there were no glasses. There was no effect. So you got a whole bunch of images of a quasi-invisible Predator, not very visually dynamic, story that goes on way too long because you're not being entertained by the effect, and a few key moments where it's like dramatic based on what you're reading, but doesn't play that way because you don't see the 3D or you don't see the revelation of something via the glasses. Point being, I think it's a little harsh to hate on this book because it wasn't presented the way it was intended to. I think it's a fine enough story. I like the artwork fine. It's cute. It didn't bother me. This is one I actually read, even though it was extended length, but I thought it was a fun premise. I rather like both the two movies I referenced that harken back to the William Castle gimmick flicks. It's also notable because this was something of a last hurrah for Predator as well. Apparently, there had been a number of Predator projects up to this point, but they decided to put Predator back on the shelf after this special came out. Probably it was the last one out because they were going to do the gimmick. They didn't do the gimmick, so they just sort of dumped it on a barren market just to get it out of the way. Took 2 years off and didn't get back to the Predator until their 10th anniversary celebrations. Excerpt from the August 1996 cover dated A Decade of Dark Horse number 2. A Brief History of Dark Horse Comics Part 2, as remembered by Randy Stradley. 1992. Dark Horse's first Star Wars comic, Dark Empire number 1, ships, as does the long-awaited third issue of Hard Boiled. Because the company has yet again outgrown its quarters, the production and design departments are moved to the second floor, while most of editorial is exiled to a building across the street, until another remodel creates new offices in the former production design space. John Byrne's Next Men begin their own series. Frank Miller's first Sin City storyline, running in Dark Horse Presents, reaches its conclusion, and Frank Miller and Walter Simonson begin RoboCop vs. Terminator. Mike Richardson forms an in-house team to begin creating a new line of company-owned characters. Frank Miller and John Byrne begin making plans for an exclusive, creator-owned imprint. After a 2-year absence, Matt Wagner's Grendel returns to comics with Grendel Warchild. The former publisher of Grendel, Comico, had filed for bankruptcy, and the courts had deemed the publication rights to the character part of Comico's assets. Dark Horse and Wagner, together, planned to purchase those rights, and the subsequent dealings with the other well-known, but now defunct players in the comic industry, who also wanted a piece of the Comico corpse, showed us just how sneaky, backstabbing, and dishonest some people could be. Ultimately, though, Matt regained the rights to his own character. Mike Barrett and Steve Rude's Nexus, formerly published at First Comics, moves to Dark Horse. An easy move, thanks to the straightforward deal with First that not only netted Dark Horse all of First's film from previously printed issues, but awarded Barrett and Rude something they'd surprisingly not had before: ownership of their character. Dark Horse moves beyond being a comics-only publisher with the publication of Andrew Vox's Another Chance to Get It Right. The film Dr. Giggles is released, with Mike Richardson credited as co-producer. A strategic move by the producers of the film to help open the door in Hollywood for more Dark Horse projects. Dark Horse's primary contributions to the film were story discussions with writer-director Manny Cotto and help with the marketing campaign. Eisner Awards: Best Finite Series, Concrete, Fragile Creature. Best Anthology, Dark Horse Presents. Best Inker, Adam Kubert, Batman vs. Predator. Harvey Award, Best Anthology, Dark Horse Presents. 1993, the Dark Horse team is finally back under one roof. Dark Horse's manga line continues to expand, not only with the publication of more Japanese created material, but also with American creator Adam Warren's series Dirty Pair, Sim Hell, based on a popular Japanese anime, X. The first of Dark Horse's creator-owned characters makes his debut in the anthology Dark Horse Comics. This story leads directly into the 16-issue Comics Greatest World series. The formation of the Legend imprint is announced. Charter members are Frank Miller, John Byrne, Mike Mignola, Dave Gibbons, Arthur Adams, Jeff Darrow, and Paul Chadwick. Fantasy film creator Ray Harryhausen supplies Dark Horse with an original sculpture for a King Kong model kit. Eisner Awards. Best Single Issue, Nexus the Origin. Best Finite Series, Grendel Warchild. Best Graphic Album New, Signal to Noise by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKeon. Best Graphic Album Reprint, Sin City. Best Painter, Interior, Dave Dorman, Aliens Tribes. Best Penciler, Steve Rude. Best Penciler Inker, Black and White Publication, Frank Miller. Best Colorist, Steve Oliff, Oleoptics for James Bond, Serpent's Tooth. Best Writer Artist, Frank Miller. Best Writer Artist Team, Mike Barrett and Steve Rude. 1994, Everything's Coming Up Legend. Byrne begins Danger Unlimited and Babe. Miller writes and draws A Dame to Kill For, and he and Gibbons produce Martha Washington Goes to War. Mignola wades in with Hellboy, Seed of Destruction. Chadwick breaks new for Concrete, Dramatic Ground with Concrete Killer Smile. And Madman creator Mike Allred becomes the newest Legend guy. Dave Scroggy becomes VP of Publishing. Lou Bank takes over sales and marketing as Dark Horse continues to expand, and soon the marketing and legal departments are moved to a building down the street. Other new series of note are Aliens Predator, Deadliest of the Species by Chris Claremont, Jim Silkey's Rascals in Paradise, Stephen Grant's Enemy, and Brian Talbot's The Tale of One Bad Rat. The 12-issue Will to Power series caps Comics Greatest World's first year. Meanwhile, the comics market, artificially inflated by speculator-driven excesses, collapses. Motion pictures of The Mask and Time Cop are released. An auspicious beginning, to be sure. The Mask was a runaway hit by anybody's standards, and Time Cop outperformed any Van Damme film before or since. With each new Hollywood project, Dark Horse gains more and more control. Eisner Awards. Best Anthology, Dark Horse Presents. Best Graphic Album New, A Small Killing by Alan Moore and Oscar Zarate. Best Letterer, Todd Klein, The Shadow. 1995, Harlan Ellison comes on strong with his Dream Corridor. Ghost becomes a Comics Greatest World breakout character. Joe R. Lansdale tackles the job of completing Edgar Rice Burroughs' last unfinished Tarzan novel, Tarzan the Lost Adventure. Dark Horse Presents hits issue number 100. Jeff Darrow and Frank Miller's The Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot wows readers, and it becomes a year of versus books. Godzilla vs. Hero Zero, Superman vs. Aliens, and Aliens vs. Predator Duel, and AVP War. As sales continue to decline across the board, Marvel announces the purchase of Heroes World Distributors, the country's third largest comics distributor, and their intention to distribute themselves. This is viewed as a crippling blow to the direct sales market and results in a scramble by the remaining two big distributors, Diamond and Capital, to secure exclusive distribution deals with as many other publishers as possible. At the San Diego Comic Book Expo, Dark Horse announces an exclusive deal with Diamond. The Mask animated television series becomes the #1 Saturday morning kids show. Eisner Awards. Best Short Story, Sin City The Babe Wore Red. Best Limited Series, Sin City A Dame to Kill For. Best Graphic Album Reprint, Hellboy Seed of Destruction. Best Writer Artist, Mike Mignola. Best Penciler Inker, Dave Gibbons. Best Coloring, Angus McKee. Martha Washington Goes to War. Best Lettering, Todd Klein. Batman vs. Predator 2. Talent deserving of wider recognition, Evan Dorkin. 1996, So Far So Good. Tarzan meets Predator. Hellboy meets Ghost. Nexus meets Madman. And Batman meets Grendel. Again, sales of manga titles continue to hold steady despite fluctuations within the rest of the market, a testament to the loyalty of manga fans. Lucasfilm's launch of the Shadows of the Empire storyline brings new excitement to the Star Wars line, even without the release of a new movie. Legend adds Walter Simonson, Star Slammers, and Gary Gianni, the Monster Men, to its roster. Legend charter member Arthur Adams' Monkey Man and O'Brien finally sees print. Barbed Wire, the movie, starring Pamela Anderson, opens and quickly closes in domestic theatrical release. The Barbed Wire comic series, Ace of Spades, by Chris Warner and Tim Bradstreet, fares better. Dark Horse announces a string of new series under the Blanc Noir imprint. Storyteller, a new anthology by Barry Windsor Smith. The Black Pearl by Mark Hamill, Eric Johnson, H.M. Baker, and Bruce Patterson. Gamera, The Giant Flying Turtle, Johnny Quest, and Comic Book by John Kricfalusi and the Spumco team. Many feel the most important new book of the year is Joe Kubert's graphic novel, Facts from Sarajevo. A 4-issue series celebrating Dark Horse's 10th anniversary is pulled together at the 11th hour by command of Mike Richardson. Plans are made to make 1987 an even better year. Nobody at Dark Horse feels particularly comfortable resting on their laurels. So we have to talk about Aliens vs. Predators 2. Design-wise, which ones do you think looks cooler?
Alien vs. Predator, that was the one where they were
I mean, like literally like the design of the character.
Oh. I see what you're saying. I think the regular alien, they have a good, I just really enjoy the design of the aliens. The extra thing that comes out of the mouth.
Jackhammer jaws,
Yeah, and I like the fact, it's like I was saying earlier, I like the fact that depending on what they impregnate is what they come out like. They take the form of a dog. They take the form of a human or whatever animal that they're in. They take that form. That seems really cool. On the other end, all the predators basically look the same. The only thing that's really different is that they're maybe taller or smaller. Their masks are different, but they're basically the same. And so as far as aliens, I do like the way they come out different depending on what they impregnate. So I'm going to say aliens.
And then along similar lines, which one wins in a fight, one-on-one?
Ooh. Man, if it's hand-to-hand, it's an alien. But if it's weapon to alien, it's going to be the predator, simply because they have the shoulder weapon,
Reach, yeah.
Yeah, you have to reach. They have the boomerang thing. Man, those weapons that he was using in Prey were just amazing. The use of the net. I mean, they just have so many options as far as, as long as they're one-on-one, the predator is going to win every day. But if it's hand-to-hand, if the predator's like, I'm going to drop all my weapons and I'm going to try and take this fucker out, it's going to be the alien, I think.
As far as the movies go, Aliens versus Predator, which one do you think is the better of the two?
Ooh. I think there's better Predator movies, but the quality of the few decent Alien movies is like Aliens versus Predator 1, they are on equal playing ground. I would probably lean towards Aliens, but after you go from part 1 to Aliens, you go to, say, Predator 2 to Alien 3, Predator 2 wins all day, and you go to Predators to, say, Resurrection, I would say Predators all day. So I think overall there's just a few there's maybe one or two better Predator movies than there are Alien movies.
But like the very peak ones, the Aliens from 1986, the first one you saw, and Predator, the first one you saw.
I would give it to Aliens a little bit more. I give it to Aliens a little bit more because I liked what they did as far as there wasn't just Ripley and Newt that made it. They also had Hicks. Hicks made it out, and the alien made it out, or not the alien, the robot, the AI. He made it out. In Predator, the girl, because she ran away, and for that back half of the Predator movie, it was just Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I would have liked to have seen his group of guys go a little bit longer. Also from a decade of Dark Horse number 1 was the new Predator story, simply titled 1718. Reading from behind-the-scenes note on Xenopedia, in Predator 2, the scene where Grayback hands Danny Glover the flintlock pistol dating from 1715 was based on an idea conceived by screenwriters Jim and John Thomas for a possible Predator movie that would take place in a time where there was no modern weapons available to combat the creatures, much like the finale of the original Predator. This concept, which was explored in Predator 1718, was allegedly the subject of a potential Predator sequel script written in the mid-90s. The story is written by Henry Gilroy, who we know as the writer of the Mondo Pest and Mondo Heat stories in the Aliens comics. The art was by Igor Kordey, who'd previously provided covers to the Kindred miniseries, but this is only interiors on the Predator character or concept. Kordey was an artist who came in during the influx of Croatian creators in the 1990s. He's best known for his work on the Grant Morrison New X-Men series, and also being fired from it because of the production of work that was not well received by fans, although he pointed out that many of those issues were produced with only 1 week's notice. He received a script, was given a week to get them done, got them done, and then Marvel didn't like what he was doing and fired him. I remember those issues. They weren't necessarily the greatest, but given the circumstances, I can't think of very many artists who could have produced anything like that in a week's time. But if you look to the actual story in A Decade of Dark Horse, it's gorgeous. It's clearly very European. The colors are painted and they are so lush. One of his influences is Richard Corbin. That's very apparent in the artwork here. The story is basically about a bunch of brigands who go too far by the captain's standards. They kill a priest, they steal sacraments. The captain insists on returning them. His men mutiny. He ends up racing from a beach to the jungle as he's outnumbered, although he fights quite well, and then he's helped by the Predator. Much violence ensues as the captain and the Predator are standing back to back to lay out dozens of men. Then they turn to face each other, only for the captain to be shot in the back by one of his men from a rifle at distance. The Predator guns down the mutineer, and the captain's last word before dying is "take it." The Predator buries him after a sort with the sacrament. Besides the flintlock, he also appears to take a crucifix necklace, and he leaves the body with one of his own telescoping spears. The November 1996 cover dated one-shot Predator Strange Roux also bore the Decade of Dark Horse branding. It was written by African-American filmmaker Brian McDonald, who had worked on such films as Return of the Living Dead Part 2, Night of the Creeps, Dead Heat, and The Resurrection
resurrected. In comics, he had contributed to Spike Lee's anthology Colors in Black. He'll produce an Aliens vs. Predator short story in the future. He worked on the comic book sequel to the Lost in Space movie, as well as the one-shot Abe Sapien Drums of the Dead. Mitch Byrd, I believe, got his start on Malibu Comics' Cat and Mouse. I know he did a Miss Fury book for them, a mini-series. Eventually moved over to the DC, where I became familiar with him off of Guy Gardner Warrior. I was a big fan of his work on that book, and that fandom continued on into his later endeavors. Unfortunately, he's not the most prolific of artists. Haven't seen a lot of him. I was really happy to see him do this book. I think it's a great little short story to close out on. So it's set in Bayou La Fourche, Louisiana, 1931. A very hot day in July. Starts out with a joke about crawfish seeing first a cow and then a horse, and Mama Crawfish telling baby crawfish, don't worry, these creatures don't eat us, we'll be fine. Then suddenly an old man comes up and Mama Crawfish is like, we gotta run, it's occasion, they eat anything. Visually what we're seeing is a predator wading through the bayou, finds a muskrat in a trap, cuts it, skins it, and eats it. One of the rare instances we get to see that happen in a predator story. Trio of fellas who'd set the trap, among others, keep finding that the muskrats are gone. They're wondering, well, maybe it's a gator, but gators don't skin their prey. Maybe it's a man, but this is the Great Depression. You're not going to leave pelt lying around. The eldest of the trio thinks it's a gollywog and tells a story. Essentially, there was a fella, he had lust for a lady, went to a voodoo witch doctor. The priestess performed a ceremony that seemed to cause his rival for this woman's affections to get trampled upon. Dude makes the mistake of not paying the priestess. She casts a spell. He starts turning into a giant frog. Before he permanently becomes a frog, he goes to her cabin and kills her. It doesn't end the spell, it just traps him in this hybrid form. And supposedly he continues to wander around the swamps, killing men, skinning them in hopes of wearing their skin to replace his own human form. Now, besides the muskrats, one of the reasons why this has come up is they start finding skinned humans up in the trees. They assume it's Klansmen skinning poor colored folk, is the way he put it. There's a particularly striking graphic half splash where we see one of these skinned corpses dangling from a tree and being consumed by a host of rats. Puts a little extra punctuation on the moment. The trio keep making their way further and further into the bayou. They eventually find the predator working on another skin. They manage to sneak up to him, almost catch him unawares, but here's the clicking of the hammer of the rifle, moves just in time for it to only get shot in the dreadlocks. One thing Xenopedia notes is that this is one of the only times where you see the dreadlocks of a predator damaged and you see it bleeding the green blood of the predator. So apparently these are less follicles and more some sort of intrinsic biological matter that's dangling off their heads. Pissed, the predator spears the first guy. The other two make a run for it. Another one gets stabbed in the bayou. The older man, the third one, the one who was telling the story about the gollywog, he's been wounded in the shoulder after trying to help one of the other guys and ultimately failing. So he just grabs the biggest, pointiest stick he can and prepares for the predator. Being a creature of honor, the predator takes its gauntlet claws and stabs itself in the bicep so that it's more of an even match with the Cajun. The predator takes off its armor, grabs a tree limb, cracks it, and prepares to advance upon the old man. He's got to get through some mud to get to the guy, though. The guy's got high ground on him. What the predator doesn't realize is that it stepped into quicksand, slowly sinks to the bottom, drowns. Cajun says, "Don't you worry, Mr. Gollywomp. When I'm sure you're good and dead, I'ma fish you out of that quicksand. I got plans for you." And then the final panel activates a splash page. See the corpse of the predator up on a hook. Rib cage is cracked open. The old Cajun is standing there with his arm in a sling, stirring a big old pot. And sticking out of this pot is the head of the predator, stuffed with all kinds of vegetables. Run, little baby, run. That there's a Cajun, and they'll eat anything. You make a mighty fine pot of gumbo, Mr. Gollywomp. Mighty fine. And just for a bit of added humor, the final page is a handwritten recipe for how to make roux out of a predator, involving 116 onions chopped, 232 stalks of celery chopped, 113 cloves of garlic or to taste, 58 bell peppers chopped, about 58 gallons of water, 1 gollywomp quartered, 350 pounds, 100 pounds okra, 37 tablespoons thyme, 30 tablespoons Tabasco or cayenne pepper, 102 bay leaves. Optional ingredients: 200 large fresh tomatoes, 29 pounds sausage, 100 tablespoons Worcestershire sauce, 58 pounds of oysters. Add 10 minutes before serving. There's additional heating instructions and the like, but you get the joke. Also, at the end, it's recommended that you check seasoning and serve over boiled rice. This is late career Mitch Byrd, at least the comic career, so he's bringing the good stuff. It's a great looking story. The cartoonishness of his style helps to offset the grisliness of some of the subject matter, but those grisly elements still have some punch to them. He does some really cool swamp animals. The predator himself looks cool. Great action sequences. It moves really well. Really enjoy the story. This is one of those instances where I actually sat down and read the entire story story instead of just scanning it, summarizing it, what have you. Definitely one of my favorite Predator stories that I've encountered so far. So anything else you want to say about Predator?
Predator. I love the character. I love the concept that there are different types of predators, in that there are some that are more berserker, while there's other ones that are just more, there's honor within the ranks, but then there's other ones that are just bloodthirsty. I'd like to see a movie like that where it's, the Predator versus Predator, you know what I mean? Showing what it's like to be, to be in the ranks of the predators.
Do you think it's better to maintain their mystique, or would you like to get a little bit more into what the predators are, where they come from, that kind of thing?
I don't need their origin. I would actually prefer it to be like something like their, man, that's tough. Like what they've actually done that right, where they haven't given you their origins in the movies. I don't know if they've done it in the comic books or anything, but at least in the movies, they haven't done that. When I was saying that it would be cool to see like a Predator versus Predator, like the warring races. I mean, I'm just talking about like a war between the two races, not really so much an origin type thing. I think I like the mystique. I like the unknown. I prefer that over the aliens, what they did with Prometheus and the other one. I don't even know what the other one was called. Covenant, yeah. I did see them both though.
Okay.
The second one better.
Yeah. Al Gofa, Andy Kuhn, Between the Pages blog, Billy Hines, who said of Alien Special, excellent comic, great atmospheric art, and an action-packed story. Terran is a gift for aliens. CH. Chris Dunford, who added, never saw this ish, how exciting. Chris Lydon, The Comic Crush, Dad86 Gets Some, Dark Gundam, Dear Watchers, a Marvel What If podcast, Del Dracula, who added on WordPress, Remember Pain Shared is Pain Halved, Dread Pirate Rumswizzle, Dirk Ashton, Ed Moore, Exploring Our National Parks, History of Comics on Film, The Irredeemable Shag, Isabella, Jimmy Alon, J.A. Books, Just Julio Raul wrote, I find it funny to see a xenomorph wearing a tux. I wonder if him and the Predator are going to win an Oscar for The Bridges of Madison County, co-starring with Sally Field and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Laugh Out Loud. Keith G. Baker, Lamar the Revenger, Mike had sent aliens to me, who added, really enjoying these, I never even knew these comics existed. Moose Matson, the hobo with the high kick, Reanimite, Richard Field, Soft Yacha, Superbound, Talk Nerdy to Me, Wandering Ambivert, and Zwit Jameson.
This has been a Rolled Spine podcast. All audio samples are believed covered under fair use laws. No copyright infringement is intended.